So we talk about the potential teams that could try and trade for Paul George. And there's 5 potential teams that could try to trade for Paul George this offseason. Now, Paul George this season played really well. I thought he played really, really good in the regular season. And I feel like, even when the playoffs came, he had his moments where he picked it up and played, good enough to be looked at as playoff P. Now, of course, he could have played better. I've had some criticism of Paul George myself in regards to how he plays under pressurized games. And, when Kawhi Leonard went out, he held it down pretty good, or at least the best that he could. He didn't finish the job, but at the same time, he was a part of the reason why the Clippers, made it to a Game 6 against the Phoenix Suns, and almost had a chance to win that series. But at the same time, you have to look at it from this standpoint. For what the Clippers are paying him, 180 plus million, I think, they expect to win because you're paying him superstar money. You expect him to win. You expect him to help the team get over the hump if one man goes down. And of course, that's really hard to do without your best player in Kawhi Leonard. But hey, when you get paid the big bucks, it comes with a price. Everybody knows that. And when you look at the situation with Paul George, it's all about to me, it's really all about Kawhi Leonard and, of course, the front office. Do the front office and Steve Ballmer think that Paul George is a good enough fit with Kawhi Leonard to win a championship? Who knows? But the main question is, do Kawhi Leonard think that? And that's where it's going to come down to. If Kawhi Leonard believes that Paul George is the best fit, then I guarantee he'll probably still be a Clipper. But if if Kawhi says no, or Steve Ballmer thinks differently, of course, then, you can definitely possibly see Paul George being traded. And one of the teams that was talked about was the Dallas Mavericks. And I've said before, the Dallas Mavericks, to me, are a good team, but they're a second player away from making a good run or a big run in the playoffs. So at first they were talking about, that was a potential spot for Kawhi Leonard. So now it's being reported that that's one of the, possible trades to get Paul George to go there. So, really, that's a confusing type situation to me. I don't personally think Paul George would fit there myself, even though I do think Luka could fit with a lot of players. But I don't know. I just feel like Paul George just needs to stay right there in LA where he is on the Clippers, because he signed a big contract, and there's no need for the Clippers to try to trade him, because you're not going to get equal value back. And it's just no way that no team really has equal value unless, like I said in my previous videos, unless you trade him for like a Damian Lillard or something like that. That's at least closer to equal value, even though I think Damian Lillard is a better player, but at least it's closer to equal value rather than trade him to a team like Dallas who has no assets to give you back that's worth, or championship worthy, I should say. Then another team I heard about was the Golden State Warriors. Now, I don't think he'd be a fit with Golden State either, because if they get Klay Thompson back and Klay Thompson, hypothetically comes back the way he was, where would Paul George fit? Honestly, with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, they wouldn't need Paul George, because Paul George would just ruin and mess up their rotation. Honestly, Paul George shoots a bad percentage a lot of times. He's not a high percentage shooter, and he'll shoot his way into a slump sometime, and Paul George will try to shoot his way out of a slump. And that's just really not what the Golden State Warriors are about. They're about high quality shots, pushing the ball and getting everybody in position to be at their best. And I don't feel like Paul George would fit with that team, especially with Draymond being the way he is. I just don't really feel like that's a route that Paul George would want to go. And honestly, I will say this, there is some trade value there, because hypothetically, if they traded, Paul George there and got back a Klay Thompson or somebody like that, then of course that'd be a good fit too. But that's if Klay Thompson stays healthy, but that's all hypotheticals. There's nothing really, valid about that. But at the same time, I still don't see the fit, for that team. Another team I heard about, of course, was the Denver Nuggets. I heard about this team maybe a few days ago as well. Now, I will say the Denver Nuggets is a team that I think that he would be able to fit very well with, but I think the Clippers will only really trade Paul George to a team like that if they got back a Jamal Murray or somebody like that included with, maybe one of their other players who are up and coming. I'm not sure. But really, it would have to be a trade for like a Jamal Murray or somebody like that, because if I tell you what, I don't know how Jamal Murray's going to come back, but how he was before he got hurt, I thought he was, a really good player, and I thought he was really up and coming. So, that would be a good trade if they was going to make that, if Jamal Murray was healthy. But the fact that he's coming off an ACL tear, I'm not sure about that either. But I can see him fitting with that team, but I still don't see no reason why to leave LA, because like I said, he's got chemistry with the team where he is now, so no need there. And another team I heard was the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, I don't see that one at all, like 0%, because who would they trade for Philadelphia to get or for Paul George? Only person they really have to give really would be Ben Simmons. And I think Ben Simmons, if they traded Ben Simmons for Paul George, I think the Clippers would be taking a step back, because Ben Simmons is not a scoring guard. He's a pass first guard. So, and plus he doesn't have a jump shot. So what would Kawhi Leonard do with somebody who can't shoot? Not saying Kawhi couldn't win a championship with Ben Simmons, but at the same time, I do think Kawhi wants somebody who's a little bit more aggressive and assertive at times when called upon, because you're getting paid superstar money and you have to be aggressive, at least, even if you're not shooting a good percentage. So I don't really see any other piece out of Philadelphia that they would, have. I would say this, though. If they did get maybe like a Shake Milton and a Danny Green, or something like that, that wouldn't be too bad, only because I always like Danny Green with Kawhi Leonard. It's just something about when Danny Green is with Kawhi Leonard, they're going to win championships. And that's just the way it's always been. When Danny Green is paired with Kawhi Leonard, they're championship bound. It's just something about that duo. It just works, and they just fit together, because that's one of the closest people, if not the closest person, that Kawhi was close to on the Spurs when he was in San Antonio, besides maybe one other player on the Spurs. But I still think, Danny Green was the was his most favorite player on the Spurs, to look at as a big brother, to look at as somebody who gave him advice and took him under his wing, sort of say. So, and besides, every time they played with each other on either team, Toronto or Spurs, they won championships. So, it's like you have to look at it from that standpoint. And, hey, that's always good to have your brothers around you, the ones you trust the most, because it feels better going to war with somebody you trust rather than somebody you don't trust, of course. So, that would be intriguing if they got a Danny Green in there with another player and maybe a draft pick or something like that. But I don't even know if the Clippers had that type of asset. But, and of course, another team I heard was the Lakers. I heard that the Lakers were a team that was that is looked at as a potential trade for Paul George. But there again, I really don't see anybody that they can trade for that'll give back equal value. They threw in a Kyle Kuzma, maybe even with Montrezl Harrell doing a reunion back with Clipperland. It's just not a valuable trade to me. I would just rather, if I was the Clippers, I'd rather just keep Paul George, because he's better than both of those players put together. And I just don't see the fit, Even though Montrez, if they did trade him back to the Clippers, it would be pointless, because to me, that ship has sailed. That situation's been over with. So it just wouldn't be a fit from an all-around standpoint. So I just don't think that's a route or a direction I think the Clippers will want to take. Now, of course, one of the last potential trade possibility or landing spot for Paul George that I'm hearing about is the Blazers. Now, I will say this. that would be a good sign and trade or trade value, because you would trade, because the only person they should trade for on the Blazers is Damian Lillard. And that means that Paul George would have his own team in Portland with Chauncey Billups as the coach. And Chauncey Billups likes Paul George a whole lot. So, I mean, that would be a good fit because they've already been together, assistant coach, player on the Clippers. So I think that they would gel just fine with a CJ McCollum. And I think they could be a formidable team. So to me, if out of those 5 teams as the teams that should be looked at as potential landing spots or a potential trade, if that's what the Clippers are trying to do with Paul George, that would be the best one, because Damian Lillard for Paul George is a perfect trade. And I guarantee you, if Damian Lillard knows that Kawhi Leonard is going to come back next year, mid-season or playoff time, they got something going, because that would be a really, really dynamic duo. And you add him with what the Clippers already have, well, I think they're championship bound. That's just what I'm going to say. I think they're championship bound if they can do that. So, I mean, that's the only good trade to me out of all 5 potential teams for Paul George. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe Paul George just ends up staying in L.A., which would be good, too, because like I said, he's already there. He's already comfortable, and the fans have already accepted him. So, I mean, hey, that's always even better if you can keep the train and the band together so you can push for another championship or another championship opportunity. You see what I'm saying? So that's pretty much how I see the situation, how it should go. But I mean, hey, that's my take on it. Leave your take in the comment section. Let me know what you think, as always, and we can discuss it. And hey, Cali out.